The SCP Foundation has produced thousands of anomalies, but only a handful have genuinely broken people. From a statue that kills you for blinking, to an afterlife designed as a prison you can never leave, to a sun that melts you alive while you stay conscious. Today I'm explaining the SCPs that have traumatized millions, starting with the one that started it all. SCP-173 is Ground Zero, the entry that launched the entire SCP Foundation into mainstream consciousness with the simplest possible concept. A statue made of concrete, rebar, and Krylon brand spray paint, completely mundane materials, and it will snap your neck the instant you stop looking at it. The containment protocol is beautifully horrible. No fewer than 3 personnel can enter its chamber, and at least 2 must maintain unbroken eye contact at all times. You want to blink, you announce it first so someone else can cover. Your most basic biological function, the thing your body does thousands of times a day, is now a life or death coordination exercise. And here's the thing, when nobody's in the room, staff report continuous scraping sounds from inside the chamber. It's always moving in there, always. It also leaves behind a reddish-brown substance on the floor, a mixture of feces and blood of unknown origin. Nobody knows where it comes from. The genius of SCP-173 is that it exploits a flaw in human hardware you can never patch. You will always need to blink, and that's all it needs. But if a creature that punishes you for blinking sounds bad, wait until you meet the one that punishes you for looking. SCP-096, the Shy Guy, a few pixels, that's all it takes. In one documented incident, a man was looking through an old photograph taken on a ski trip. Somewhere in the background, barely visible, was a figure, a few pixels wide. He didn't even notice it consciously. SCP-096 noticed him. SCP-096 is a pale, emaciated humanoid with disproportionately long arms and a jaw that can stretch open to 4 times normal human capacity. Most of the time, it just sits there, docile, almost pitiable. But the moment anyone views its face, whether in person, in a photograph, or through a handful of pixels on a screen, something irreversible begins. It screams and cries for 1 to 2 minutes, then it stops, then it runs, and it will find you, across any distance, through any barrier, with a 100% kill rate. No traces of the victim are ever recovered. Here's where it gets unsettling. Nobody knows what SCP-096 actually is. No origin story, no explanation for why viewing its face triggers a kill response. It doesn't hunt because it's hungry. It punishes the act of being looked at, anxiety about being perceived, taken to its absolute lethal extreme. Now consider this. One leaked photograph shared on social media, viewed by dozens of people across 6 continents, each one triggering a separate pursuit. That's not a containment breach. That's an extinction scenario hiding inside a JPEG. But if 096 is terrifying because it comes for you, wait until you meet the thing that drags you somewhere far, far worse. SCP-106, the Old Man. Let's talk about how the Foundation actually deals with this thing. The primary containment involves keeping it sealed inside a lead-lined steel box suspended over a vat of hydrochloric acid. If it breaches containment, the backup plan is essentially burn everything it touched and pray. That's the Foundation's A-game, a box over a pool of acid. SCP-106 appears as an elderly humanoid in a state of advanced decomposition. It can pass through solid matter like it isn't there, and everything it touches begins to corrode and decay within seconds. But the real nightmare is what happens after it catches you. It targets lone individuals, stalking and disabling its victims before dragging them into a pocket dimension it controls entirely. The corridors, the rooms, the flow of time itself, all of it bends to the Old Man's will. And here's where it gets genuinely sadistic. SCP-106 doesn't hunt because it's hungry. It hunts because it enjoys it. It keeps victims alive for extended periods, torturing them across what could be hours or days. Some victims are even released back into the real world, not out of mercy. It lets them go so it can hunt them again. This isn't Predator horror. This is a game master who built the maze, controls the rules, and gets bored if you die too quickly. But if you think a sadistic old man with his own personal torture dimension is bad, wait until you meet something the Foundation has tried to kill hundreds of times and failed every single attempt. SCP-682, hard to destroy reptile. The Foundation's containment plan for this thing is to keep it permanently submerged in hydrochloric acid inside a 5-meter reinforced cube. That's not a punishment, that's lunch, because SCP-682's biological filtering gills extract usable matter from any liquid solution, meaning the acid designed to incapacitate it is actually providing a constant food source for regeneration, which is, not ideal. This Keter-class reptilian entity has been documented moving and speaking coherently with 87% of its body destroyed. Most of it is gone, and it's still having conversations. I don't know what to tell you, but the real nightmare isn't its durability, it's that 682 learns. Every termination attempt the Foundation has thrown at it just makes it stronger. It adapts its own physiology in response to whatever tried to kill it, developing full immunity to SCP-409 and every other anomalous weapon they've tested. Every creative solution becomes another upgrade, and it does hate them. SCP-682 expresses open contempt for all biological life and has formed a communicative relationship with SCP-079, an AI entity. So now you've got an unkillable reptile coordinating with an artificial intelligence. Great. The community turned the cross-testing logs into an entire phenomenon. Increasingly absurd termination proposals became a meme format, people pitching everything from other SCPs to just dropping a nuke on it. None of them work. 682 isn't just a monster, it's a judgment against human capability. But if an indestructible lizard sounds manageable, wait until you hear about a staircase that goes down forever and has something waiting in the dark. SCP-087, the Stairwell. Most SCPs give you something to be afraid of, a creature, a face, a thing that chases you. SCP-087 doesn't bother with any of that, it just gives you stairs going down, and the absolute certainty that you should stop walking. Somewhere on an undisclosed university campus, there's a door that opens to a staircase. Except the staircase doesn't end, it extends far deeper than the building's physical dimensions should allow. The Foundation sends D-class personnel down those stairs, and nobody has ever reached the bottom. But the depth isn't even the worst part. Your flashlight stops working, not in the battery's died sense. The darkness actively eats your light. You're not walking through a dark room, you're walking into something that doesn't want to be observed. Then there's the sound, distant voices crying out from somewhere below you. No matter how far you descend, you never get closer to the source. The stairwell stretches ahead of you faster than you can walk, and somewhere in that darkness, explorers have encountered SCP-0871, a floating humanoid face with no pupils, no nostrils, no mouth, just a face hanging in blackness that shouldn't be possible. The scariest part? The face doesn't have to do anything. Each exploration log reads worse than the last, with subjects experiencing mounting panic the deeper they go. You don't need a monster chasing you when the architecture itself is trying to break your mind, but if an endless staircase into sentient darkness sounds bad, wait until you hear about the thing that watches your family for 12 nights every December. SCP-4666, the Yule Man. So let's talk about the anti-Santa Claus. And I don't mean some edgy reinterpretation. I mean a naked, emaciated humanoid that has been stalking families during the Christmas season for centuries. SCP-4666 is believed to be a single entity, standing over 2 meters tall, completely unclothed, regardless of temperature, and it only appears during a 12-night window from December 21st to January 1st, exclusively north of 40 degree latitude in areas with sustained snow cover. It targets isolated rural families with at least one child under the age of 8, and what follows is a progression so deliberate it feels designed to break you. Nights 1 through 7, the children start seeing it, standing at the edge of the tree line, watching from across a field, sometimes pressed against a window while they sleep. The parents find nothing. Nights 8 through 11, footsteps on the roof, an unbearable stench fills the home with zero identifiable source. The family is losing their minds, and they still have no idea what's coming. Night 12, it enters. In roughly 85% of cases, it kills every family member except one child under 8, who it takes. In the remaining 15%, it leaves gifts at the foot of the children's beds. Toys and constructs, crafted from the remains of previously abducted children. The Foundation recovered what was designated SCP-4666A instances, items constructed from human tissue, bones, and hair belonging to previously abducted children. The craftsmanship was described as crude but deliberate. Children's bodies reshaped into playthings and left as presents for other kids, which is, not ideal. But if the Yule Man turns familiar spaces into nightmares, wait until you see what happens inside a perfectly normal furniture store. SCP-3008 is an IKEA, that's it. A regular branded furniture-selling IKEA retail store. Except when you walk through the front entrance and lose sight of the doors, you're not in an IKEA anymore. You're in SCP-3008-1, a space that looks exactly like the inside of an IKEA but extends for at least 10 square kilometers in every direction, with no walls, no exits, and no visible end. Laser rangefinders pointed into the distance return inconclusive results, which is a polite scientific way of saying it might be infinite, and we'd rather not think about that. Since containment began, exactly 14 people have managed to walk back out. Nobody knows why them and not the others. The factors determining escape versus permanent entrapment are, and I quote, entirely unclear, so that's reassuring. But here's where it gets properly unsettling. You're not alone in there. SCP-3008-2 instances wander the showrooms. Humanoid figures wearing yellow IKEA employee shirts. They look almost human, except their proportions are wrong. Too tall, too short, limbs that don't match, and zero facial features. Just smooth, blank heads above a staff uniform. During the day cycle, they ignore you completely. During the night cycle, when the lights shut off, they become violently hostile and start repeating a single phrase. The store is now closed. Please exit the building, which is, not ideal when there is no exit. When you kill one, it doesn't bleed. Other instances just silently gather around the corpse. Nobody knows why. You recognize every shelf, every fake living room display, every meatball-scented corridor. You just can never leave. But if an infinite IKEA sounds like a bad place to be trapped, wait until you hear about a dimension with literally nothing in it at all. SCP-3001, Red Reality. This one isn't really a monster story, it's a love story. And that's exactly why it's one of the most devastating entries in the entire Foundation. SCP-3001 is what the Foundation calls a non-dimension, a paradoxical pocket of nothing that stretches infinitely in every direction. No matter, no light, no sound, just a red, empty void with a Hume level of 0.032, so absurdly low that normal physics basically stop applying. Matter decays at an impossibly slow rate. Injuries that should kill you just don't. You can lose more than 70% of your body tissue in there and still function normally, as long as 40% of your brain stays intact, which is, not ideal. On January 2nd, 2000, Dr. Robert Scranton was accidentally transported into SCP-3001 when seismic activity damaged reality-bending equipment at Site-120. He was married to Dr. Anna Lang. They worked together, and in an instant, he was gone, trapped in a dimension where he couldn't die, but could slowly lose his body over the course of 6 years. He had a control panel that got pulled in with him, and he used it to record everything. His observations, his thoughts, his slow unraveling. Those audio logs were eventually recovered when the panel unexpectedly returned to baseline reality. A man talking to his wife who can't hear him, watching pieces of himself disappear, unable to escape through death because this place won't let him. He survived for at least 5 years, 11 months, and 21 days. Despite nearly 30 years of technological advancement since the accident, the Foundation has never successfully retrieved him, but if being trapped somewhere horrible with no escape sounds bad, wait until you hear what the Foundation discovered about what happens after you actually die. SCP-2718, What Happens After? Most SCPs are things you can point at, creatures, locations, objects, stairwells that go on forever. SCP-2718 is none of those. It's information. Specifically, it's a description of what actually happens to human consciousness after you die, and the Foundation considers that description so dangerous that nobody is allowed to read it. Nobody. Not Level 5 clearance, not the O5 Council, not anyone. It carries the highest possible classification for information-based anomalies. Damerung class cognito hazard. The word itself is German, roughly translating to twilight or the end of all things, which is, not reassuring. Here's what we do know. People brought back from death fall into two categories. The first group remembers nothing. No light, light, no tunnel, no dead relatives waving from a cloud, just a gap. The second group remembers everything, and whatever they remember is so psychologically devastating that the Foundation treats the knowledge itself as a weapon. The actual content is redacted. Even within Foundation documentation, the description is scrubbed, blacked out, buried under layers of classification that shouldn't exist. The implication is clear. Death is not an ending. It's a transition to something so horrifying that simply knowing about it constitutes torture. And here's the part that makes containment impossible. You can't lock information in a box. You can't shoot it. The Foundation's entire strategy is just making sure no living person ever finds out what's on the other side. That's it. That's the whole plan. The genius of SCP-2718 is everything it doesn't say. The redactions do all the heavy lifting. Your brain fills in the blank with something worse than any writer could put on a page, because your brain knows exactly what scares you most about dying. But if death hiding something unspeakable shook you, wait until you hear about the SCP that actually shows you what's waiting on the other side. SCP-7179. E is for eternity. Imagine you die and you wake up on a tropical island. There's a beach house waiting for you. The sun is shining. Beautiful people are there, completely loyal to you, ready to do whatever you ask. Sounds like heaven, right? It's not. SCP-7179 refers to an unknown number of extra-dimensional spaces, each measuring roughly 10 kilometers per edge, to which every human consciousness is automatically transported the moment they die. No exceptions, no opt-out. You die, you wake up on the island, and at first glance, it looks like paradise, comfortable shelter, eternal sunshine with the sun locked directly overhead. But those loyal companions, they have zero will of their own. They're not people, they're furniture that breathes. Try to leave, and you don't hit a wall. You just appear on the opposite edge of the same space. Swim in any direction for as long as you want. You'll end up right back where you started. It's a 10-kilometer box with a nice view. Here's the part that makes it genuinely nightmarish. You can't die inside SCP-7179. Injuries heal at normal rates, meaning you experience every second of the pain, but death never comes to end it. You can suffer. You just can't stop suffering. The Foundation already tested this. They applied something called the Dante-Isaac construct to a terminal cancer patient, effectively killing him and sending his consciousness into SCP-7179 on purpose. Which means the Foundation isn't just studying the afterlife, they're experimenting with it. So to recap, every human who dies goes to a tropical island where they can't leave, can't die, can't form real connections, and can't measure time. Solitary confinement with a beach house. Forever. But if you think an inescapable afterlife is disturbing, wait until you meet an SCP that doesn't just trap one person, it traps reality itself. SCP-3999, I am at the center of everything that happens to me. Every SCP follows rules. There's a classification, a containment procedure, a description, and maybe some test logs or recovered documents. You read them, you process them, you move on. SCP-3999 doesn't do that. SCP-3999 takes the format you've been trusting this entire time and sets it on fire. This thing is classified as a ZK class end of reality scenario. Not end of the world, not end of a dimension, end of reality. The entire framework of existence itself is what's at stake here, and the Foundation's grand plan for containing it. Force a single researcher named Talaran to endure an endless cycle of torture, degradation, and death as a human buffer between this entity and everything else. The containment procedures include things like monthly tapeworm infections, among other horrors that read less like science and more like punishment, which is, you know, not ideal. But here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. The containment procedures don't read like containment procedures. They contradict themselves, they spiral, they collapse into nonsense and rebuild into something worse. The entity appears to be aware that it exists inside a written document, potentially manipulating the narrative structure of its own entry from the inside. The title alone gives it away. I am at the center of everything that happens to me. That's either fourth wall awareness or narcissism so extreme it warps the text around it, and honestly, both options are terrifying. You can't tell if SCP-3999 is a real entity within the fiction, an institutional delusion infecting Foundation documentation, or a fiction within a fiction that's figured out how to fight back against its own format. The documentation is the containment, and the documentation is compromised. That's the horror. You've been trusting these clinical reports for hundreds of entries, and this one looks you dead in the eye and asks why. But if SCP-3999 breaks the rules of how an SCP is written, the next entry breaks the one thing every living creature on Earth depends on to survive. SCP-001. When day breaks. This is the one that breaks everything. SCP-001. When day breaks carries an Apollyon class designation. That's the highest threat level the Foundation has. It doesn't mean hard to contain. It means containment is impossible, the damage is irreversible, and the world as we know it is already over. Within the first 24 hours, approximately 6.8 billion people are affected. That's not a typo, that's the entire planet. Here's how it works. The sun changes. Not visibly, not in any way you'd notice by looking at the sky, but every wavelength of visible light it produces now carries a transformative property. And because moonlight is just reflected sunlight, nighttime doesn't save you either. There is nowhere on Earth's surface that is safe. Any living organism exposed to this light begins to change. The process resembles melting wax. Skin liquefies at the point of contact. Muscle tissue follows. Bone structure collapses. The entire body restructures into an unknown biological state that doesn't match anything in recorded science. But here's the thing that makes this the single most horrifying entry in the entire SCP Foundation. You don't die. Consciousness persists throughout the transformation, and after it, your body becomes something unrecognizable, and you are awake for every second of it. The process is irreversible, and awareness does not fade. You experience your own dissolution, fully conscious, with no endpoint. Every other SCP on this list is a monster, or a place, or a concept you can at least try to avoid. This is the sun, the thing that makes life possible, and one day, without warning, it becomes the thing that ends everything while keeping you aware for all of it. There is no containment, there is no survival, there is only the sun and what it does now. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.